Harekrishna, everybody. Nice to have you all here tonight. Happy to be here myself. So we're going to sing a little song before we begin here with the class. So is there anyone, I don't know if there's some new faces here this time, is there anyone who doesn't know the song we're about to sing, Jai Radha Madhava? Don't be shy. We have little sheets. Hey, where is Zach? Oh, you don't know the words? What? Okay. Okay, looks like I have some recruits here going to get the sheets for you guys. So we have little. Alright. Cool. Alright. Could you give one over to the Prabhu over there in the back? Okay. Alright. So this song is by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's about Krishna and Vrindavan, So it kind of describes some of his activities there. Sorry. So it's describing how Krishna, he's there lifting Govardhan Hill. He's there with his lady friends, the gopis. He's giving pleasure to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So we'll sing a little bit. It's a very nice and short song. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So today we get to hear from the Bhagavad Gita. We're reading from the 3rd chapter, text number 26. So if everyone could follow example here, and please turn your cell phones to off or silent for the duration of this lecture. That would be appreciated. Thank you very much. So this is this chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita is entitled Karma Yoga, or action dedicated towards Krishna. So before we begin reading from the Bhagavad Gita, we always chant an invocation verse, kind of glorifying the Supreme Lord Krishna and praying for his mercy. So it's a little short one. If you don't know it, you can just kind of follow along with everybody else. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so chapter 3, text number 26. So I'll briefly go over the Sanskrit, and we'll read Srila Prabhupada's translation and his purport. Na buddhi bedham janayed agyanam karma sanninam josyayet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samarcharan. Translation. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached in the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Vedaischa sarver aham eva vedya. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performance of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna-conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Though the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna-conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties. So before I begin giving a little explanation here, I offer prayers to my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada that I can say something beneficial to all of you and myself. Om Jnanat Mrandasya Yaranjana Shalakaya Chakshunamritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada are opening my eyes to the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto them and all members of Sri Parampara. So I'll just read this one more time here, the verse translation. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So I picked this verse out today because it actually very much reminded me of Srila Prabhupada. Today I wanted to speak a little bit about Srila Prabhupada, and this verse came to mind. So what is this Krishna consciousness, this Bhakti Yoga process? This whole Bhakti Yoga process is learning how to dedicate our activities, which we already perform, in service to Krishna. So there is a distinction between material and spiritual activities. Here, material activities are referred to as fruitive work. Now, this is kind of funny language, maybe for some people, enjoying the fruits or something like that. It's kind of funny language. But it's actually a very simple concept. I do something to get a result. I do something and I want to enjoy the results for it. I ran the race, I got first place, now I want the trophy, I cooked the food, now I want to eat it, It's like, you put in some work and you get the result. It's a pretty basic concept, even a little child can understand it, He asks his mom for the quarter, puts the quarter in the machine, gets his little gumball or whatever, He understands this idea of fruitive work. So the idea is that most people in this world, maybe myself included to some extent, we are in the habit of acting like this. that we work and we try to get some result from it. But the idea actually behind Krishna consciousness is that actually that whole process of fruitive work, that will actually not make us happy. The idea behind Krishna consciousness is that actually by satisfying the Supreme Lord, by satisfying Krishna, we'll become happy. So, so why is that? In Krishna consciousness, the idea is that we're all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. In other words, we are all Krishna's sons, daughters, So we're all Krishna's family. So actually by satisfying Krishna, we become happy, just in the way that if a child satisfies his parents, and they're good parents, the parents will take all care of the child. The child doesn't need to do anything separately other than satisfy his parents. So similarly, the devotee, someone in Krishna consciousness, he dedicates all their activities in service to Krishna, and doing that, he knows that he will be satisfied as well. He's intelligent. So, but okay, most people, they don't have all this high philosophy in the beginning, and they may not have faith in these teachings. That, okay, someone might be thinking, if I satisfy Krishna, then what's going to happen to me? Someone might be thinking like that. So this verse is kind of is explaining the gradual process of changing this activity of working for my own kind of gratification into working for Krishna's gratification. And the neat thing about it is it doesn't actually, our mode of work doesn't have to change that much. So it's actually stated, this verse is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text number 127, big book. So pull it up here. So in this verse, Krishna, in the form of Lord Chaitanya, if you don't know Lord Chaitanya, just to simplify, we can simplify as Krishna here, setting the example. Krishna is advising that one should remain at home, remain in his activity, and chant the holy name of Krishna always. So one can remain in his position and continue and begin this process of devotional service. So for the average person, we have so many different careers. We may be a medical person, we may be a school teacher, we may just be a cashier, So how do I dedicate my service to Krishna? Well, the idea is you give some of your fruit to Krishna. You give maybe some of the money to Krishna, or the temple, or some spiritual cause. That's part of it, and you dedicate that. And also, one can also use his profession in Krishna's service. Just like if someone may be a doctor, they may apply that to treating sick devotees, sick religious practitioners. Someone may be a lawyer, he may help people out that are in legal difficulties, maybe. So similarly, all our natural propensities can be dedicated into the service of Krishna. So when we think of Srila Prabhupada, I think most people here are familiar with Srila Prabhupada, but he is the founder of our Hare Krishna movement. And Srila Prabhupada, he engaged all sorts of people in working for Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada actually, it's kind of an interesting case with Srila Prabhupada, because I'm talking in the beginning about lawyers and medical men and all these people at maybe kind of high class positions. But Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he was working with maybe colloquially known as hippies, maybe not quite the skill set, But as mentioned in this purport, Prabhupada says that someone who's slightly developed in this knowledge of Krishna consciousness may be directly engaged in the service of the Lord. It's not that we can't engage our whatever propensities we have in Krishna consciousness, but there are also some activities which are considered very directly Krishna consciousness, particularly this hearing and chanting process. So anyone, whatever position they can be, if they have a little faith, a little interest, they can take this chanting and hearing process. And this chanting and hearing process is described as Chaito Darpana Marjanam. it cleans the dirty desires in the heart. Whatever our, maybe our less desirable qualities that we may have, envy, hatred, all these things we may have in our heart. We may not like them, but they're there. This chanting process will help to cleanse those things. So, sorry, where was I here? So this this chanting process is an easy way for anyone in the beginning to take to this process of Krishna consciousness. But Srila Prabhupada, he was very expert in that he wanted to give his devotees, his practitioners, someone who's new to Krishna consciousness, a program to engage in Krishna consciousness 24 hours a day. This is kind of an interesting program. So Srila Prabhupada, he established a morning routine for his practitioners, for those who could do it. Getting up early, rising early, seeing the deity, chanting Hare Krishna in the morning on beads, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are directly spiritual activities, and the more and more one practices these activities, the more one becomes attached to Krishna. So the process of Krishna consciousness is such that one develops a taste for the activities of hearing and chanting about Krishna, and gradually loses his taste for other things. It's not simply like it's not that you just give something up that you enjoy and then you're like, oh, I got to take to this Krishna consciousness. But actually, through this hearing and chanting process, through associating with devotees, taking Krishna prasadam, taking spiritual food, that one begins to relish these things. One begins to actually develop a serious taste for these things, and that attracts him or her to keep engaging in these things. So this verse is talking about how someone who's learned in Krishna consciousness, he gradually introduces someone to the process of bhakti yoga. He gradually introduces them to whatever devotional practice the person's ready to take up. The person might not be willing to change their activities in any way, but they can chant Hare Krishna and take prasadam. So in this way, the person with no knowledge of Krishna gradually comes to the program of the platform of spiritual understanding. So earlier in this class, I mentioned how this concept of how satisfying Krishna, we will be happy. You've probably heard this so many times before, but the analogy is given that when we're hungry, many of you may be right now, we have the feast coming up. When you're hungry, you have to put the food in the mouth and then go into the stomach. And naturally, when you do that, the whole body's enlivened. You get the energy to dance again or go home or whatever. Whatever you're gonna do afterwards. But if the leg's tired, you can't feed the leg ladus. You can't feed the toes glubjamins. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually go through the authorized process. So similarly, everyone in this material world, they are actually thinking like that. They're thinking that actually by satisfying this body, I will be happy. But actually, the case is that our position, how we're made, as creations of God, creations of Krishna, is that we are happy when He is happy. Actually, we are satisfied when He is satisfied. So this is kind of an interesting concept. It's described that in the higher position, the living entity, he actually is very much awakened to this consciousness. He feels a love for Krishna, a love for God, a natural attraction. And his only pleasure is in seeing Krishna happy. The example is given in this world of a mother and their child. That the mother, naturally, the child is very helpless. What can the child do for the mother, The child can't do very much for the mother. But the mother, what's the child doing to satisfy the mother's senses, Child's not feeding the mother, child's not clothing the mother, child's not paying the mother's bills. Child's not doing a heck of a lot for the mother in one sense. But actually, the mother, she is only satisfied when the child is satisfied, you know. So similarly, we will actually only be satisfied when we work for the satisfaction of Krishna. So ignorant people, and like is described in this verse, they do not know this. So they should be encouraged to take up some kind of work in the spirit of devotion. And this way they will get some realization of it. George Harrison, when he wrote the preface to our Krishna book about Krishna's pastimes, he said the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So this idea is that when one takes the practice of Krishna consciousness seriously with a little bit of faith, then one will actually get some kind of a taste for it, and one will want to continue. So, kind of another thing that should be mentioned here is that sometimes people, they may have this idea that, oh, if I give all my stuff to Krishna, if I dedicate all my activities to Krishna, what's going to be left for me, you know? So Srila Prabhupada says in this last sentence of the purport, he says, "For the fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties." So this isn't necessarily advocating that one give up all of one's prescribed duties as a mother, as a husband, as a responsible citizen, but one should understand that ultimately, actually, I'm being maintained by Krishna, the Supreme Lord, and that by dedicating a portion of my activities to Him, by dedicating my activities to Krishna, then Krishna will maintain me, even if I may work a few less hours a day, or maybe a little less time during the week, or if I dedicate some of my time to hearing and chanting, I will still be maintained. You know, this is the position of the devotee. The devotee actually understands that actually my action in Krishna consciousness, my service to Krishna, that is actually the most important thing. So we're all trying to protect our position here in this material world, and myself included. You know, we go to the doctor, we go to our landlord, make sure our rent's paid, make sure we don't get kicked out. You know, we're all trying to protect our position in this world. But really, what is our assurance of protection? I don't mean to shock anybody, but I do read the news every once in a while. I wouldn't advise it for everybody, but and I was reading about this earthquake, you know, and the people were saying one of the things people were saying, they were saying there was no time to react. So our position in this material world is kind of like that, actually, that we never know what's going to happen to us. So what is really our protection? And what it's said in Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures like it, is that our protection is actually being in touch with the Supreme Lord Krishna. It's being in touch with the spiritual reality. It's this understanding that I am eternal, that when the body dies, I do not die, that I can go on after that. And people may be so anxious about death because they don't know what's going to happen afterwards. They think, oh, when the body's finished, then I'm finished. You know, what to speak of us, our loved ones too. You know, we may think, oh, okay, a mother, they may think when my husband's finished and my child's finished, they're finished. And that's a very scary thought, because we love each other. It's a very scary thought to think someone will cease to exist. But the Bhagavad Gita says that there is never a time when we did not exist, and there is never a time when we will cease to exist. That simply these bodies, they're kind of temporary residents, just like when they rent an apartment or something like that. So it's a temporary residence, and that our protection lies actually in our consciousness. That whatever activities one engages in this life, that'll determine their next life. You know, whether their activities are good or bad, or what they're interested in. So if someone is interested in Krishna consciousness, they will be given facility in their next life to be in a platform or a position where they can execute their Krishna consciousness. And this is actually a very comforting thing, because everyone wants to keep doing what they like to do. I don't think anyone could argue against me there. So a person in Krishna consciousness, he's protected like that. That in his next life, he'll be given the facility to keep doing what he wants to do. So that is actually our real protection. So one should not simply be concerned with his or her material body and the needs of it. The needs will be taken care of if one actually seriously practices Krishna consciousness. We should take smart precautions. If it's raining, you bring an umbrella. If you're sick, you go to the doctor. But we should understand that ultimately, Krishna or God is in control. There's so many sick people, they may go to the hospital and they may still not make it out. There are many people who miraculously get better. So ultimately, it's actually up to Krishna, up to God. But it's not an arbitrary system. It's not that God just picking, this guy's going to live, this guy's going to die. Doesn't think like that. But Krishna, he, though he's not obliged to, generally, people who act piously, who act nicely, they get good results. And people who act in a not so nice way, they get what's coming to them. So the idea is that much of what happens to us in this life is incurred by is a result of our past deeds, whether in this life or in previous lives. So one should not be overly disturbed. Sometimes people get this idea that, why is this happening to me? Why is this all victim mentality? And this is actually a very defeating mentality, because if I'm just a victim, what can I do? What can I do about it? But if I understand, there's actually something I can do to change things. Maybe it's like maybe you go to jail for something. I understand. I went to jail. I did the wrong thing. But if you have good behavior in the prison, you can get out early. Also one can understand that if I act in such and such a way, I will never come here again. So this is actually intelligence, to understand why things are happening to us and how we can change our futures. So this verse actually particularly is pushing us to try to actually change the futures of others. It's stated in the Shastra that actually the devotee, they see that actually the suffering of others is due to their lack of God consciousness, due to their lack of Krishna consciousness, due to their lack of knowledge of the workings of this universe. So the spiritual practitioner, they want to enlighten people about this knowledge. So they try to do it in whatever way they can. So it's kind of like I'm repeating myself a bit here, but so a spiritual practitioner, he tries to get people to take up the process in whatever way they can, by dedicating some of the fruits of whatever activity they're engaged in Krishna consciousness, by having them take prasadam, by having them take up this process of chanting Krishna's names. And in this way, they can actually gradually come to the spiritual platform. We don't have to deprecate, we don't have to insult people's current position, but we should try to bring them to a better position. That is actually the way of that is the way of uplifting somebody. We don't simply insult somebody or whatever. We actually try to bring them to a nice higher level of acting. So this is what Krishna is advising here. So if anyone has any comments or questions, I'll take some now. Otherwise, I'll continue speaking. Anybody? Any comments or questions? Prabhu. Sorry, could you speak up a little bit? Does he pick them up?
He said, does Krishna pick up his devotees?
I'm not sure I'm totally understanding the question here.
He said, does Krishna pick his devotees with choice? Whom he gonna pick?
Yeah, yeah. So it's described. Yeah. So it's described.
In my experience, I try very hard.
Yeah.
I can become like my pastor. So I feel, Krishna picks up people that could be devotees. Others try, but they are still not.
Does Krishna choose people?
Mm. Yeah. So one thing I'll say there is that it's stated in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna, he is sitting in the heart of every living entity. So, kind of in other words, Krishna knows what you're thinking. He knows what you want. So, the idea is like Krishna, he's there, and if we want to understand the reality, if we're actually inquiring like, who am I? What is my purpose in this world? Then Krishna, as the super soul, he'll facilitate that. He'll give directions, just like you have Google Maps on your phone. If you want to go somewhere, Google Maps will give you direction. You don't know how to go there, but Google Maps will give you direction.
So you have to have a desire.
So you have to have the desire. And you have to have some sort of desire. And what's interesting, actually, is that the devotee actually is meant to instill that in even people who don't have the desire. Krishna, he has the desire to make other people devotees, bring them that platform. So he sends his devotees out to instill this spiritual desire in people. Like for myself, maybe I had some questions, but I don't know if I was really seriously spiritually seeking when I come in contact with the Bhagavad Gita. But when someone reads the Bhagavad Gita, questions like they become interested. Oh, this is very interesting. This book is saying that I never die, that I'll never cease to exist. Like, what's this all about? So the devotees actually, they create a spiritual interest, and this interest, it is something that needs to be fanned. It is something that needs to be regularly cultivated. It's like, okay, I'm very interested in spiritual life, but that needs to be. You need to do something to actually increase that desire. It's like, okay, if I read Bhagavad Gita, I read page 1, okay, that's very nice. But if I don't read page 2 and I just go on with my life, then the tendency is to get distracted, So actually, this desire has to be increased by the association with other spiritual practitioners. That they have to keep reminding us what is important in life. So that's a very key aspect in Krishna consciousness. It's not exactly that Krishna arbitrarily chooses his devotees, but for someone who actually has that spiritual interest, or for someone who is begin to take that up, Krishna gives them increasing facility.
Question.
Yeah.
About the evolution. So let's say that I have a desire and I'm praising Krishna, and then the tsunami, is that a blessing or a curse? Because then if I survive that, or if I fail at that, is that a blessing or a curse?
Could someone who is a little closer repeat that a little bit? I'm not quite hearing.
So when something happens, like the tsunami in
You have
Indonesia,
the desire to
Yeah.
follow Krishna.
and somebody who is desiring to follow Krishna is affected by that, is that
Yeah.
a blessing or a curse?
That's an interesting question. So the devotee, he actually tries to see everything that's happening to him or herself as Krishna's mercy. And whatever situation they're in, they try to use that as a way to increase their Krishna consciousness. So someone who may be over there, if after their kind of immediate needs are taken care of, they may be thinking about how to help others. That's one thing, maybe how to get others in their situation. But also the knowledge of spiritual life, just like there may be so many people over there that are, as I read, that are mourning for losses of loved ones, And this actually, this spiritual knowledge that, okay, actually your loved ones still continue to exist, that, that's there, and that your loved ones are actually still around in one sense. Knowledge, and also giving people a process to go on with their lives after that, to go on with their lives after such a loss. This is what a spiritual practitioner can do. They can see it as an opportunity to preach, and also it can also increase their desire to become serious. You know, if I'm sitting comfortably in Hawaii, not anything against Hawaii, but I'm sitting very comfortably in Hawaii, and I got my beach chair, and I got my nice lemonade, you know, and nothing's going wrong, you know, I can think, oh, this world's not such a bad place to stay. Who needs Krishna? I don't need Krishna. I got my lemonade. You know? But this is a little silly example, but it's to remind us actually that our place in this, our time in this material world is actually very temporary, and our situation is flimsy at best. You know, so that's another way one can look at it, you know. Hope that answers your question to some extent.
That's a reminder.
Yeah.
Just a comment to that.
Yeah.
That, you know, it could become, and a tsunami can come and hit you in Hawaii.
Yeah.
As you said, flimsy.
Yeah. So, anyone else have any comments, questions?
I just wanted to add that we can't approach Krishna directly. The soul who can approach Krishna directly doesn't do that anyway. The way to approach Krishna is through Krishna's devotees. Krishna's devotees are more merciful than Krishna. So sometimes when we're struggling, maybe Krishna consciousness doesn't feel so easy, and we're thinking, well, Krishna, why do you make it so easy for him and not for me? You know, that's the time when we really need to approach devotees and say, please, give me some service, give me some
Yeah.
help me see what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, that's an important point that I kind of wanted to make, that we may not know how to really serve Krishna, but the devotees, especially the spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, they can help direct our activities in such a way, even our civic situation, that we can learn how to serve Krishna in whatever capacity we can. Guru Krishna Prabhu.
I just wanted to add that as far as any natural disturbance that comes our way, for the person who's perfected his life and he's remembering Krishna always, whenever his time of death comes, whether it's tsunami or something else, it's a good thing. It's Krishna conscious and he's been delivered from the material world, no more suffering. He's back home, back to Godhead. For the person who's on the path but it's not perfected, it's an interruption. He's cut off. But the thing about devotional service is that he doesn't lose that. Now he has to come back again and start again where he left off. So there's no loss or diminution. He has to go through childhood,
Yeah.
12 years in high school. So for him, it's not a good thing. It's not really a good thing. But the liberated soul, it's great. He's back home, back to God.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah. Jayashree, and then you.
When such circumstances come, and then you only forget to remember Krishna, but Krishna comes to help him to remember. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, we can see that it's described that basically whatever devotional service someone performs, even though it's maybe very brief, Krishna recognizes that. Krishna remembers that. Just like we may meet someone very briefly in this life, and they may do something nice for us, and we'll remember that for a long time. You know. So similarly, yeah. So their question is that sometimes when some kind of disaster strikes or some kind of something may disturb the equilibrium of the mind, and someone might not be able to remember Krishna very well, even though that person has practiced sincerely for some time, you know. But the idea is that actually, in that circumstance, that Krishna will actually send help. It's not necessarily that Krishna is going to come and like appear before the person, but he might send his devotee or a picture, some kind of reminder of him, you know. So Krishna, if the devotee forgets Krishna, Krishna will help him remember. That's the idea. You had something?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji said that, like he said, that normally a soul person does whatever divides do.
Yeah.
So what about people who are victim of addiction and all? They want to come out of that.
Yeah.
But they don't want to do it, but keep doing that.
Yeah. So he's asking about addiction. You know, how does someone kind of come out of that? It's kind of a little bit of a complicated question. But one thing that is there, I think that is there, is the person who is addicted to whatever behavior or substance that they're doing. They need to be given some kind of alternative, you know, and they need to be given different association. It's like if I always hang out at the bar, and then my goal is not to drink, what do you think's going to happen? I'm going to drink, you know. So I need to change my circumstances to some extent. So someone who's addicted to whatever behavior, they need to actually work to change their external circumstances. You know, and it's not just, I mean, we could say, okay, mind over matter, but also one should be intelligent and also also change the matter around a bit too. You know, one should be. This is why we have temples, because it encourages a spiritual sangha, encourages someone to desire to practice Krishna consciousness. You know, so someone who's trying to quit something, they need to be given some kind of higher engagement, and it may be a struggle. You know, it may be a struggle. You know, most people with addictions, they don't quit in one day. You know, it's even if they do apparently quit in one day. Someone was telling me there was a thought to quit that was repeated. You know, they had a kind of an increasing desire to do so. So that's another important point, that one actually internally one must actually be convinced that whatever addictive behavior that I'm doing is actually bad for me. One has to be convinced of that. If one thinks that the addictive behavior is not bad for me, what's his impetus to quit? There's no point, you know. So one actually has to understand that whatever behavior I'm caught in, that is actually detrimental to me or people around me. Yeah.
It just reminds me that we're all addicted to material energy.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that this isn't good for us, that there is something higher, and then to accept instruction from the spiritual master, from Krishna's words, and the examples of the saints of how to do it.
Yeah.
It's the same process with alcoholics.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I think at this point, well, I'll end the talk here. Oh, we have one more question? Oh, right in the back? Okay.
I want to connect with what you said. I heard somebody say that love and addiction are the same thing.
Interesting. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada, he was once talking to John Lennon at one point, and John Lennon, he was asking him, "Oh, how do you tell who's a spiritual master?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, you find the person who's most addicted to Krishna." So, naturally, become addicted to something we're attached to, something he said, love, you know. But we have to see whether that thing is actually helpful for us and others, you know. You know, we have to see if it's a kind of constructive love or destructive love. Okay. Anyone else going once? Okay.
Elaborate, please, Prabhuji, about the constructive love.
She was just, yeah, she was asking if I elaborate on this constructive love or destructive love. Well, kind of on a very basic platform, I think we're all kind of teasing our way around this idea of addiction or whatever. Okay, if my habit, you know, decreases my financial situation and my kind of basic caring for others' needs, then that would be kind of destructive, you know, I'd say. and also kind of on the point of constructive, is we have to understand what's good for what's really good for others. This is kind of what we kind of seek to explain in Krishna consciousness, is that I could help somebody in so many ways. I can give them a place to stay, I can give them food, I can even give them a job, whatever, you know. But actually, and those are some forms of help, but the idea is that really I'm not really going to improve that person's situation until I give them some kind of spiritual knowledge, you know. The idea is that everyone, they're going to be kind of set in their ways, whatever ways, you know. You got to think say you have some poor individual, you know, and you may give him a house, you may give him a job, but you also have to educate the person so he doesn't become poor again, you know. So you got to think what put that person in that condition, you know. So a Krishna conscious person, he wants to elevate somebody. He wants to bring them to a higher position, a higher level of happiness. So they seek to educate them on this knowledge that I am not this body, that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, and that by connecting with Krishna, that is my real happiness. Otherwise, I could do so many things for somebody, but not to be grim or anything, but I could do so many things for somebody, but at the time of death, everything's finished for them. All the material work I did, it's all finished. But if I give them spiritual knowledge, then that'll actually go with them to their next life, and also will help them prepare for their next life. Hope that helped a little bit. Okay. So I'd like to thank you all for your questions tonight. Help me say a lot of better things than I might not have said. So thank you all. We'll have kirtan now for another 15 minutes, then we'll serve out the dinner. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.